Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel where we chat about practical ways to grow our own food in small urban spaces across Europe. Today I want to take you back thousands of years to the ancient lands of Mesopotamia, where the mighty Euphrates and Tigris rivers carved their way through vast deserts under a blazing sun. Those enormous stepped temples known as ziggurats, built by the Sumerians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, rose high like giant staircases reaching for the sky. They were not just grand places of worship, but clever structures that helped manage water and create growing conditions in a tough climate. The people there faced floods one season and long dry spells the next, so they designed these terraced pyramids with multiple levels to let rainwater drain gradually, while holding moisture where it was needed most. Each tier formed its own little microclimate, with the lower ones staying damper and cooler, and the upper ones getting more sun and drying out faster, just like in the famous Ziggurat at Ur or the Hanging Gardens of Babylon with their clever irrigation channels. This approach allowed them to cultivate crops year-round and showed real engineering smarts from the Sumerians that kept their civilization thriving despite the harsh environment. It was all about working smart with nature rather than fighting it, and that is exactly what we can bring into our own gardens today. Homing in on why this ziggurat idea works so well for small gardens right here in Europe, or even across the pond in the States. Lots of us have only a tiny backyard or patio and still dream of growing enough fresh veg to feel a bit more self-sufficient without it taking over the whole space. The stepped design stacks the growing areas vertically, so you save loads of floor room while creating several different microclimates in one compact structure. In our typical European rainy spells, it drains excess water quickly to stop roots from rotting, and in hotter, drier summers, the lower tiers hold on to moisture longer, which is handy for places like southern France or the UK in July. It is also dead easy and cheap to put together, with stuff you can pick up at any garden center, making it realistic for renters or homeowners alike. The finished thing looks quietly charming, like a miniature ancient monument tucked into your plot, which adds a nice touch without being over the top. You end up with more variety in one spot because each level suits different plants, and it just feels satisfying to harvest from your own little tower of green. No hype needed. It simply makes sense for busy folks wanting clean produce from their own patch. Before we dive into building, let us run through the materials you will need and why each one matters. Start with plastic tubs or square pots in gradually smaller sizes to form the stable steps shape, with the biggest at the base, around 50 centimeters across, stepping down to about 20 at the top. They are lightweight, durable, and easy to find, which keeps the whole project affordable and movable if you ever need to rearrange. Mix up some good quality loam or topsoil with plenty of homemade compost and a bit of sand or perlite for drainage, because that mirrors how the ancient builders layered their soil to prevent compaction. Add a handful of small stones or gravel for the bottom of every container to ensure water flows away freely and stops the soil from getting waterlogged, just as those Mesopotamian engineers would have done. You will want seeds or young plants for a mix of leafy greens, root veg, and herbs, plus perhaps a bag of organic slow-release fertilizer for later feeding. If you fancy adding a simple watering channel like the old irrigation systems, grab some thin, flexible tubing, but it is optional for the first build. All in all, you can keep the cost under €50 if you shop sensibly and reuse what you already have lying around the shed. Now let us get to the fun part and build your mini ziggurat raised bed step by step, keeping things straightforward and true to those ancient principles. First, pick a sunny spot in your garden or on the balcony that gets at least 6 to 8 hours of direct light each day, because most vegetables need that steady warmth to thrive in our European climate. Next, arrange your pots or tubs into the pyramid formation, with the widest and heaviest at the very bottom for stability, and the smaller ones stacked neatly on top. Make sure each level sits securely and slightly offset, so the whole structure feels solid and looks balanced, like a proper stepped ziggurat. For each tier, start by adding a layer of those small stones or gravel, about 5 centimeters deep at the base, to create excellent drainage right from the start. Then fill with your soil mix, leaving a couple of centimeters at the top for watering space, and press it down gently so it settles without being too compacted. If you are using the optional tubing, run a thin line between the levels now so water can trickle down evenly, mimicking the ancient channels. Once the structure is ready, it is time to think about planting, which we will cover in more detail soon. But for now, just know that each tier will suit different crops based on how much moisture and sun it naturally gets. In places like the cooler north of Europe, such as Scotland or Germany, the upper tiers catch plenty of light for sun-loving herbs, while the base stays moist enough for salad leaves that do not mind a bit of shade from time to time. This setup really helps with the unpredictable weather we have been seeing more of lately across the continent, where heavy downpours can waterlog flat beds, but here the steps let everything flow away nicely. You might find it useful in urban flats in cities like Amsterdam or Vienna, where space is at a premium, yet you still want to grow something fresh for your kitchen table. It encourages you to think about soil health too, because layering the compost means you can refresh each level separately without disturbing the whole thing every season. Another practical side is how it fits into a sustainable lifestyle by cutting down on trips to the supermarket for those plastic-wrapped veg, and instead letting you pick what you need when you need it. Many of us in Europe are trying to reduce our carbon footprint, and this little tower does its bit by making the most of what little outdoor area we have, without needing fancy tools or big investments. If you are renting a place in Barcelona or Lisbon, the movable pots mean you can take the whole structure with you when you move, which is a real bonus in these transient times. Plus, it looks rather nice in a subtle way, blending into modern balconies or traditional allotments without shouting for attention. When choosing your pots, think about using recycled ones from the local recycling center, or even old buckets that you clean up properly to keep the eco angle strong. The soil mix works best if you can make your own compost from kitchen scraps, which is something a lot of us are already doing anyway to cut waste. Adding perlite helps in areas with clay-heavy soil that tends to compact in the rain, and it keeps things airy for healthy root growth all year. You will be surprised how much you can produce from just 5 or 6 tiers if you pick the right combinations of plants for each level. Before you start assembling, it is worth checking the forecast for a dry day so the soil does not get too wet during construction and make everything heavier than needed. In my experience with similar setups in a small courtyard here in the UK, the stability comes from placing the base on a flat surface like paving slabs to stop any wobbling in windy weather. Each step up adds a bit of height, which also means easier harvesting without bending down too much, which is handy if you have back issues or just want to garden comfortably. The ancient inspiration reminds us that simple designs can be incredibly effective, even in our busy modern lives across Europe. Once the structure is built, you will notice how the different levels create natural variations in temperature and humidity that suit a wide range of crops without any extra effort. For instance, the bottom tier might stay cooler and damper, perfect for things like spinach or radishes that prefer consistent moisture in our variable summers. Higher up, where it dries faster, you can grow Mediterranean herbs like rosemary or thyme that love the extra sun we get in places like Portugal or Italy. This variety means your harvest can be staggered, so you have fresh produce coming in over several months rather than everything at once. It is worth noting that this approach also helps with pest control because the elevated tiers make it harder for slugs to reach the upper plants, and you can spot issues early on each level. In European gardens where space is tight, this vertical stacking maximizes every square centimeter without turning your patio into a jungle. You can even adapt it for apartment living by scaling down to 3 tiers if your balcony is really small, yet still get a surprising amount of growth. The whole project feels rewarding because it connects us to those clever ancient ideas while solving very current problems like food prices and self-sufficiency in cities. Let me just add that preparing the soil properly at the start saves a lot of headaches later on, especially in regions with poor quality urban dirt full of rubble from old buildings. Mixing in a slow-release fertilizer means you do not have to feed every week, which keeps things low maintenance for those of us juggling work and family. If you decide to include the tubing for watering, it can connect to a simple rain barrel if you have one, which ties in nicely with water-saving practices popular now in drier parts of Europe. Overall, the build takes maybe an hour or two once you have the bits together, and then you are ready to bring it to life with plants. Thinking ahead a little, the lower levels will retain moisture longer, so they are great for thirsty crops during those occasional heat waves we see more frequently these days. Upper levels, on the other hand, benefit from better air circulation, which reduces fungal problems common in humid northern climates like the Netherlands. You can experiment with companion planting across the tiers to make the most of the space, such as pairing beans with carrots in different spots. This design really encourages creativity without overwhelming you, and it fits perfectly into the sustainable urban gardening we talk about here on the channel. By the time you have finished the structure, you will have something that not only works well, but also stands as a quiet nod to history in your own backyard. It is practical for beginners because the steps are forgiving if you make a small mistake with drainage or soil depth. Many viewers have told me they started with just 2 tiers and expanded later once they saw how easy it was to manage. That kind of flexibility is what makes it so appealing for life in European towns, where plots vary so much from country to country. Now that we have the basics covered and the build is done, it is worth pausing to consider how this ties into broader efforts to garden more responsibly amid changing weather patterns. The stepped levels mimic natural landscapes in a way that helps biodiversity by offering different habitats for insects and soil life right in your urban space. In areas like the Alps foothills or coastal regions of France, the drainage prevents erosion during storms, which is a common issue with traditional flat beds. You will find it integrates well with other sustainable features, such as nearby compost bins or rainwater collection systems that many of us already have set up. To wrap up this first part of our chat, the mini ziggurat offers a clever way to grow food efficiently, and it draws on timeless wisdom that still makes perfect sense today. We have looked at the history, the reasons it fits our needs, the materials, and the step-by-step build, all in a realistic way that anyone can try. Next time, we will move on to choosing plants and caring for the whole thing through the seasons. But for now, I hope this has given you some inspiration to get started with your own version. Thanks for watching this half of the guide, and I will see you in the next part when we get into the planting details. Right then, now that the mini ziggurat is standing proud in your space, it is time to get those plants in and start the growing adventure. Choosing the right plants for each level will make all the difference to your success and keep things low maintenance as the seasons change across Europe. For the bottom tier, where moisture lingers longer, go for leafy greens like lettuce, spinach, or kale that enjoy consistent dampness without getting soggy thanks to the good drainage. On the middle levels, you can plant things like carrots, beets, or beans, which benefit from the balanced sun and soil in our typical temperate weather. Higher up, where it is drier and sunnier, Mediterranean herbs such as basil, thyme, and oregano do really well, especially in warmer parts of Europe, like Spain or Italy during the summer months. You could also try strawberries or dwarf tomatoes on the top tiers for a bit of fruit, and they will appreciate the extra light and airflow. Start by sowing seeds directly into the prepared soil or popping in young plants from the garden center, depending on the time of year and what you have available locally. Water each tier gently after planting to settle the soil around the roots and help everything get established nicely. In spring across much of Europe from the UK to Poland, this is the ideal time to get your cooler season crops going on the lower levels while waiting for warmer weather for the upper ones. Keep an eye on the weather because late frosts can still nip in, so have some fleece handy to protect the young plants if needed in places with unpredictable springs. Once planted, the structure needs regular but not excessive watering, and the stepped design makes it easier to see which levels are drying out first. Use rainwater if you can collect it, as it is better for the plants and ties in with sustainable practices we like here. For feeding, give a light application of organic fertilizer every few weeks during the growing season. But remember, less is more to avoid lush growth that attracts pests. In summer, when it gets hot in southern Europe, the lower tiers will hold moisture better, helping plants cope with drier conditions without constant watering. Mulch the top of each pot with a layer of compost or straw to lock in moisture and suppress weeds, which is particularly useful in urban settings where soil can dry quickly. Pests like aphids or slugs can be managed by checking regularly and using natural methods such as picking them off or encouraging ladybirds, which love the varied habitats. As the season progresses, you will start harvesting from the bottom up, with quick-growing salad leaves ready first, followed by roots and herbs later on. This staggered approach means you have fresh produce over a longer period, which is perfect for small households wanting just enough without waste. In autumn, as days shorten in northern Europe, like Sweden or Denmark, you can plant hardy greens that tolerate cooler temperatures on the sheltered lower levels. Clear away spent plants gently to make room for new sowings, and refresh the soil in each tier with a bit more compost to keep it fertile for the next cycle. Over winter, the structure can be used for hardy herbs, or protected with a cloche if you want to extend the season in milder areas, such as the south of England or coastal France. It is low maintenance overall, but taking time to observe how your specific climate affects each level will help you refine what works best year after year. Many gardeners in cities like Berlin or Paris have found this setup boosts their yield compared to flat containers because of the microclimates. You end up learning a lot about how plants respond to different conditions in a small space, which is both practical and quite interesting. If things do not grow as expected, it is often down to drainage or light, so adjust the position or add more perlite next time around. The beauty of using pots is that you can tweak each level independently without starting from scratch. This makes it forgiving for beginners and rewarding as you see the results from your efforts. Sharing produce with neighbors is a lovely part of urban gardening, and this tower often sparks conversations about sustainable growing. To conclude, this project brings together ancient wisdom with modern needs in a way that is accessible, affordable, and effective for European urban spaces. Whether you have a balcony in Budapest or a tiny yard in Dublin, the mini Ziggurat can help you grow more food sustainably. It reduces reliance on shop-bought vegetables and connects you to the joy of harvesting your own. Thank you for joining me across both parts of this guide, and I hope you give it a go, and let me know how you get on in the comments. Remember, gardening is about learning as you go, so do not worry if the first attempt is not perfect. Experiment with different plant combinations each season to see what suits your local conditions best. Staying observant and patient is key to success with any small space project like this. Until next time, happy growing and take care. In places like the Netherlands with lots of rain, the upper tiers help prevent overwatering issues that flatbeds often face. You might notice better root development overall because the stepped levels promote natural air circulation around the plants. For those in mountainous areas of Austria or Switzerland, the design handles wind well by keeping the base stable and heavy. It is also a great way to teach kids or family members about history and nature all at once while growing food. If you live in a city flat in Rome or Athens, the top tiers catch the intense sun perfectly for heat-loving crops without scorching the lower ones. Adding a few companion plants like marigolds on the edges can help deter pests naturally, which saves on any extra treatments. Over the years, you will develop your own rhythm with the seasons, and this little structure will become a reliable part of your routine. The whole thing encourages a slower, more mindful approach to gardening that fits busy European lifestyles nicely. Many viewers have shared how they adapted the idea for community allotments in places like Manchester or Lisbon with great results. It is worth keeping a simple notebook for each tier to track what grew well and what needed tweaking for your microclimate. This vertical method also means less weeding because the compact design limits space for unwanted plants to take hold. You will find harvesting is quicker too, since everything is at different heights and easy to reach without tools. During those humid summers common in Belgium or Luxembourg, watch for mildew on the lower greens and improve airflow if needed by spacing plants out a bit. The ancient inspiration reminds us that patience with nature pays off, and the same holds true in our modern urban plots. If space allows, you could even build a second one for more variety, once you see how the first performs. It really is a practical solution for anyone wanting to dip their toes into self-sufficiency without a huge commitment.